If that bit of melody sounds familiar to you, you know what's likely to happen here. It won't happen, though, in quite the way you'd expect. The reason is that the series of broadcasts, long known as Gems of American Jazz, is about to undergo a transformation. But don't be alarmed. There'll still be plenty of the true and the righteous stuff, and it will be conducted by that same old doty disciple of the music that moves, Mr. George Malcolm Smith.
Ah, thank you, Floyd W. Richards. And good evening, kind listeners. The man says other for a particular reason, for the word implies more than one. And there are certainly more than one kinds of jazz music that we call jazz. In fact, there's quite a variety, enough to suit any taste. And that's why each week we invite an exponent of the music that moves to demonstrate his special preferences. This evening we have with us a knowledgeable and uncommonly articulate jazzophile, columnist, television critic, and jazz authority of America's oldest newspaper, the Hartford Courant. Welcome, Owen McNally, to our little spot of hot.
Thank you very much, George, and thank you for that marvelous introduction.
Good to have you.
I certainly couldn't have written anything any better or more flattering myself.
Even autobiographical. Owen, you know the way this show goes.
Yes, sure.
I
listened to the show.
Now, the audience won't believe this, but I haven't the slightest notion of what you're going to play tonight.
Absolutely not.
You'll
you have
swear
no
by
idea.
that?
I absolutely swear.
Well,
I know it's on a stack of Oscar Peterson albums that George knows nothing about what I'm about to play.
Don't do that. That's a clue.
No, that's not a clue. That's a misleading clue, George. That's a red herring.
Well, then it's a pianist.
Yes, it is a pianist.
And
there is a connection.
A guessing game.
Between Peterson and this pianist, who's one of my favorite pianists and has been ever since I was a kid.
I'm afraid you're giving it away.
It's a very heavy clue there. But
well, let's have the music and then we'll chat about it afterward.
Fine.
So here we go. so beautiful.
It's a lovely,
Name the
lovely
man.
record.
You have the privilege.
Well, the piano player was Art Tatum, of course.
Mm.
That almost goes without saying because there isn't anybody who plays quite like that.
No.
And then the tenor player was Ben Webster.
Oh, my goodness. While I was listening, I wouldn't let Owen tell me who it was. I struggled with a half a dozen names, but Ben Webster, of
Ben
course.
Webster.
Oh, I'm so
Yeah.
ashamed of myself. I'm going to quit this business. If I can't get Ben Webster, I'm in
Well, you
trouble.
might have guessed Coleman Hawkins or any number of those
Not quite
big-tone
deep,
tenor
deep,
players.
deep enough for Hawkins. But
Yeah, and
it's Ben Webster.
Webster
I did
stays.
think of Chu Berry, but I think he's...
Yeah, that's
he,
another one you could think of.
He
Sure.
puffs a little more. His
Yeah.
notes come out
Probably
in blasts.
this Webster was a little bit different from a lot of Ben Webster you hear because it's more restrained, and that's why this particular piece worked because with some of these other artists that Tatum worked with, they would try to emulate or surpass his technique, which of course is ridiculous. I mean, in the same series, there's an album cut by Buddy DeFranco, who's a marvelous clarinet player and is a great virtuoso player in his own right. But when you're playing with Tatum, I think you have to kind of pull things down, pull the energy level down, because he's such an incredible technician. You don't compete with somebody like that, and I think this is why this album works, because
That's
Webster doesn't do
interesting
that.
too, and there was no competition there. It's been so often said that no one can play with Tatum because he climbs all over you.
Oh,
Now,
absolutely.
we certainly did not in that.
No, it was done with taste and restraint, and I think that one of the interesting things about Tatum is that he's quite often condemned for this tremendous technique that he has.
The
But
virtuosity.
the virtuosity, but actually there was much more to Tatum than mere virtuosity. There was also fine musicianship and much sensitivity. His harmonic sense was so rich. In most Tatum things, there's so many modulations that it's just so modern sounding.
Some of them right in the middle are staggering.
Absolutely, that's the
wonder
element of
how
surprise.
How the man ever did it. And you hear the pianists of today, before him and after Tatum, could never rip through those little arpeggios so fast and so delicately.
That's another thing. He has a really delicate touch and a keen sense of dynamics. And there are albums, some albums that are hard to come by, where you will hear a different phase of Tatum's playing. That blues album with Joe Turner.
Oh, yes.
And that album, that's very interesting because he plays in a very light style and with a lot of single note lines that sound something like Nat King Cole. It's a different kind of style. It's not that tremendous, Vladimir Horowitz type thing where he's up and down the keyboard.
We should add, Owen, that Big Joe Turner is a blues blaster.
Absolutely.
He stands right up there and lets it blast out at you.
So here you
and
have
in the background was that beautiful blues, sheer blues,
pure
accompaniment.
blues. That's where he came from, and where did Oscar Peterson come from? I ask you. Peterson came from Art Tatum, and Peterson would be the first one to admit that. And any pianist today will admit that Tatum is like the beginning. The famous anecdote about Fats Waller playing in a club.
Surely, yeah.
And Waller was just knocking him out as he could because he was not only a marvelous pianist but also a fine entertainer. Tatum came in the club, and Waller stopped right at the high point of his performance, got up, and said, "I am a pianist, but Art Tatum is here, and God is in the house."
Right.
So I
Beautiful.
thought that we could start out by
love
bringing
that.
a little bit of God to the house or to the studio or whatever. Maybe we would help out with the Connecticut Public Radio's finances.
God help us.
God help us.
We'd better get on with another. Here's another surprise. I don't know what it is, but Owen McNally of the Hartford Current is going to give it to us. So let's hear it. Beautiful. It took a little while for me.
I know you get it, though,
Yeah.
George. It was
That's the great man. One of the great men, yeah.
absolutely another one of my favorite piano players, Teddy Wilson, who's sort of the Mozart of jazz piano players. That's become sort of a cliche to compare him with Mozart, but he has that rich, lyrical, inventive quality.
Extremely delicate.
Yeah. But you could hear some Tatum in that with some of the arpeggios up on top, but there's more Earl Hines, I think, in Teddy's playing than certainly more than you'll hear.
Well, of course, he
Tatum
doesn't have that staggering, colossal technique.
No, he's
so
more
that his hands can float.
It's more of a melodic invention. I think he's one of the most melodic of all jazz players.
Well, beautiful things he did. Those things with, well, of course, the Goodman trio and sextet, or quartet, sextet too, and the accompaniments for Billie Holiday, just beautiful.
Classics, absolute classics. And I think this particular recording was made in 1941, so it's 42 years ago. And I think that this, which of course is one of the hallmarks of jazz, is that the music holds up so well, so unlike most music that you hear today, which is more like junk food, which is just meant to be heard and quickly forgotten. But you can go back to Wilson, or every time I go back to Art Tatum, I find myself astounded.
Well, and Tatum has been gone. It
since
must
the
be
mid-50s.
20,
Yeah,
20
sure. At least
almost 30 years.
Almost 30 years.
And no one has.
But every time I go
equaled
back
him.
and listen to a Tatum album or Teddy Wilson, I just discover things that I had never heard before.
Even, of course, the curse of that Oscar Peterson has to endure is the comparison with Tatum. It's
Well, I think anybody who
unfortunate.
plays that really that virtuosic style piano always will be compared with Tatum.
But that's the
you
kind
know,
of
the
piano.
incomparable Tatum. But
That's the kind of piano it will never do for the corner drugstore, or the elevator, or the.
it'll never qualify as elevator
because
music.
you hear these wonderful
Yeah.
things.
It's
and
elevating music,
snap
but
to
not elevator music.
Yes, right. The dentist's office. Owen, you have another one, please.
Yes, I do.
Mystery record. Beautiful, Owen.
It was very nice.
That one I could spot.
I didn't imagine you would have any trouble with that, George.
Milt Jackson and John Lewis.
Yep, the
And
MJQ, Connie Kay, and
Modern Jazz
Percy
Quartet.
Heath, our friend Percy Heath, who was in town not long ago.
Of the Heath brothers.
Of the Heath brothers.
Who are
right.
now reunited.
Right, and played in Hartford very recently for the Hartford Jazz Society. That is sort of a prototypical MJQ tune because it's rooted in the blues.
What was it? The
It
title
was
of that?
Baggs Groove.
Bags,
of course,
Baggs
being
Jackson,
Milt
yeah,
Jackson.
yeah.
You know, and it's prototypical because it's rooted in the blues, and yet it also has like the that little contrapuntal counterplay they have in the beginning.
A bop
and
feeling to it.
yeah, right. It has that bop technique. Although one of the things I like about it is the nice spare, lean lines that Lewis plays in his chorus. They're very blues rooted, and it's so simple that it sounds almost like some of the spare things that Count Basie plays. You know, it's I don't know if there's
but I got a touch in there of bop. I could.
Well, that's where they came
almost
from.
hear
Of course,
Gillespie,
they were in the Gillespie band. You know,
Gillespie playing the
Milt Jackson
lines
and
in
John
there.
Lewis were in one of Dizzy's early and finest bands, and in fact, that's where they came out of. The MJQ came out of that band, but with Kenny Clark on drums. And then, as you remember, Kenny Clark was replaced by Connie Kay, who had a different kind of touch.
Yeah, Clark dashed overseas and is doing
Sure, that was
extremely well in Europe.
In that period in American history when a lot of particularly black musicians were going to Europe, but Dexter Gordon and so many others like that found a more receptive climate in Europe than they found in this country. I guess with the advent of rock and roll and lots of other conditions.
How pleasant to know that
but they're coming home again.
Most of them came home.
So you can come home again, despite what Thomas Wolfe said. You can come home again, and there seems to be a revival of jazz in this
Depends on
country.
where you came from. I wouldn't want to see some of my old homes. I know I was, this is a digression, but I was within 1 block of my grandparents' home in a town up in Massachusetts, and my daughter said, "Wouldn't you like to see it?" And I said, no, I don't. I think it would have spoiled everything if I'd ever seen that old place
Sure.
again. So it's just as well not to try to get home. Although in the case of the black boys who went overseas and expected so much, and they were welcomed with the warmest arms, to see them coming back. Oh, we're on a music kick here. We must have some more. Owen, what have you picked for us next?
I've got quite a bag of goodies for you, George, and I think you'll like the next one, too.
Let's have it. Oh, Owen, I'm so grateful.
It's,
Back to the 40s.
Very close. That was recorded in 1937, but it certainly has that feeling of the 40s with Billy and Lester, one of our greatest presidents ever, and
Our 40th president.
yeah. I think probably our greatest. I think his image should be carved into Mount Rushmore.
But we don't hear enough. He was playing clarinet. We don't. We were saying a few moments ago. I managed to guess who was on the thing. We don't hear enough of Lester Young's clarinet. Possibly he played no more than 6, 7, 8 solos with the clarinet.
Yeah, he
And
unfortunately was
it could be just
underrecorded.
as distinctive as his tenor playing.
Yeah, he had a marvelous tone on clarinet. I mean, it was as distinctive as that lovely lyrical quality he had on tenor. But you're right, though. He was hardly recorded. There's a great tune called "I Want a Little Girl," on which he plays clarinet.
The bassy job?
I can't remember the group he was with. Maybe it was with a small group from the Basie Band, but it's a little gem, you know. And I wish he had recorded more, but this
Basie
particular
liked
piece was on
I
tenor.
Want a Little Girl, played it a lot.
Yeah.
Something about the changes in it entranced him because he played it many times.
Well, of course, this is all from that Billie Holiday period when I think she was probably getting paid like about $50 a side or something, and they just recorded I don't know how many scores of tunes like this, and it was all with really great people like Lester on tenor and Teddy Wilson on piano, and even
Buck Clayton, you mentioned.
Buck Clayton was playing those nice,
on the
tasteful,
trumpet.
muted obligatos in the background.
It was a great period.
I had to play that one because if I didn't, my wife Sheila would break my neck because it's one of her favorite tunes, and that's how she got started into jazz, was through that.
Could I be your deputy? I'd like to have Sheila break my neck.
I think it could be arranged, George.
Break anything. Love that Sheila. I hope she isn't listening at the moment. Owen, the next one.
Well, the next one, George, this is probably very unfair of me because there's kind of a hook to it, and there is some rather abominable music in there that I should apologize for now, even before it's played. But we can talk about that after.
Is that
we hear
awful?
it.
Oh, dear.
Yeah,
Well,
probably worse.
let's be shocked.
Okay.
Oh, and you're forgiven for the organ.
Well, the organ
Oh,
playing,
dear.
that is to music what Ally McGraw is to acting. But, I just thought I'd throw this one at you,
Oh, good
George.
heavens. Well, it's a bit of a coincidence. We were just talking about Lester
That is.
Young.
That shows
the
how
clarinet,
spontaneous this is.
his clarinet and his tenor.
Sure.
And he plays both in...
Yeah, I don't know if there are many records around like that where he plays both clarinet and then tenor. But I think it's a classic example of art triumphing over dreck.
mediocrity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who was the organist?
I don't know if I can reveal his name because we might be jeopardizing the station here. That we might be up for a lawsuit for libel.
dear
But
boy.
his name was Glenn Hardman, who has gone on, slipped into obscurity, which is a good place for him, probably.
We're cruel. But, that was a surprise. When it first started out, I thought, we're in trouble.
Well, I had
This
never
man is-
intended that we'd turn this into a Lester Young evening. I tried to get more variety.
Well, it's
but it
kind
just
of
turned out that
difficult to
way.
avoid.
Yeah. Well, I
almost
find that,
every guest we've had has just felt he has to have a Lester Young.
Well, I think it's absolutely necessary. I find that Lester is one of the few musicians who still speaks directly to me when I listen to the music. I mean,
There was something in that clarinet that revealed that similarity between his clarinet and
the
his
same
tenor.
sort of approach, kind of laid back and very melodic, lyrical quality.
Although he loves to
He can
play
swing,
in
too,
the,
like
in
crazy,
the depth
yeah.
of the clarinet, and then when he gets to the tenor, he likes to lift it up into a...
and give it that
a higher-
breezy quality,
yeah.
that really nice uplifting sound that he had.
That was amusing. Many
Well, I had to
thanks,
throw you at
Owen.
least one curve, George. I can't
Owen
let you
Mc-
off the hook easily.
Owen
you know?
McNally of the Hartford Courant trying to kill the moderator.
It's called
here
Kill a
tonight.
Host. Yeah.
He deserves it. Let's have another one.
Okay, George.
There he is, Charlie Parker.
Right, George. And it's a blues tune.
Yada-da-da-da.
It later became a pop tune, believe it or not. It was called Do the Hucklebuck.
Oh,
They
of
swiped,
course.
what they did is, it was
Oh,
a
the
little bit of
Hucklebuck.
plagiarism. They swiped the
Oh, my goodness, I'm glad
Charlie
you
Parker's
mentioned.
line, which was a
I'm-
blues line, and then it became very popular, and whoever swiped it probably made more money than Charlie Parker ever made in his whole life.
Well, the Hucklebuck. This
Yeah.
now we go way back.
It's the same. Oh, this is from the 50s. You know, this thing was
it's from the 20s.
recorded.
In an old, you remember Charlie Pierce had a band in Chicago, and the band was all the Chicagoans, like Bud Freeman
Marvelous
and
tenor player.
oh Lord, all those old timers. And in the middle of another piece comes a ta-da-da-da-da-da, ta-da-da-da-da-da.
Is that right?
I
Oh,
stopped it, played it over, ta-da-da-da-da-da. I thought, good heavens, that's the Hucklebuck.
Yeah.
It was just a little figure
Just a
that was
little
thrown
lick,
in the
yeah.
back. And now you say it went from
And then in the 50s, it became a pop tune. It was like a, I don't know
The
if it was
Hucklebuck.
rhythm
Good-
and blues
it's
or
a good tune, too.
early
It's got-
rock and roll or something, you know.
isn't it one little da-da-da-da-da-da,
Yeah,
da-da-da-da-da, one little phrase has gone on in jazz music through all kinds of revolutions and transformations for, oh my heavens, 50, 60 years.
Sure. Preserved.
So
and-
that's what it is. Da-da-da-da-da. The Hucklebuck. But originally it was just one little figure thrown in by a group of Chicago boys
Mhm.
into some popular tune, or whatever the tune was.
It is
Isn't
funny
it?
how licks show up in different places.
Lot. Well, it's a good one.
Sure.
One boy winks at the other one and says, let's give him the Hucklebuck. And it makes a nice little figure for a background while a solo's going on.
Sure.
Well, I'll be darned. Revelations.
Revelations.
Yeah,
A religious
yeah.
experience,
We
truly.
Yeah, go back. Let's have another religious experience.
I think this
yeah.
one, George, I think this next one will be exactly your cup of tea.
a history of jazz here.
Sort of, yeah. I think at least a keyboard history.
Bud Powell.
Absolutely, very good, George. And I told you that would be your cup of tea.
Yes, I like Bud Powell. I'm puzzled by him, though.
Well, he took the Tatum thing sort of a step further by incorporating the bebop thing, the Charlie Parker, the things that Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie were doing. And Bud has sort of become the fountainhead for modern jazz piano, right up through Chick Corea and Herbie Hancock and, more modern players. I mean, where they're coming from is really from Bud, things that Bud was doing 30-something years ago.
Yes, but sometimes I think more for ill than for good, because that top hand of Bud Powell's became a figure with all the piano players since.
Mm-hmm.
The top hand running the runs. To the detriment of the bass.
Mm-hmm. That was certainly was a sign of the bebop piano player, was that sort of frenetic right hand with not much happening in the left hand except for rhythmic punctuations.
But our friend Tatum
right.
had that bass strong.
Absolutely,
all
sure.
the time.
And Bud really came out of Tatum in a way. He was also a technician, and there's a story, whether it's apocryphal or not, is that Powell was playing in a club and Tatum came in, and Tatum said, "You're not playing anything." And then Bud proceeded to play the same tune, but with one hand and with his left hand, and he played the whole thing with all of the crazy embellishments and the dazzling virtuosity, but with his left hand. And then Tatum said, "Well, okay, you're all right." And of course, if you were endorsed by Tatum, I mean, there was no higher endorsement.
No.
So Powell was also very much aware of that, that he wanted to always be a two-handed piano player. But you're right, there are an awful lot of bebop piano players became
so
one-handed players.
I'm getting weary of the right hand.
Mm-hmm.
I wish you could go back to
stride, go back to James P.
the
Johnson.
Boogie Boys and the Fats
Peterson
Waller
indulges
with a
in that.
strong bass.
Peterson has
Yes,
that strong left hand, and a lot of times in a live concert he'll go right into boogie woogie or stride piano just to rock things,
The right hand always bothered me. I always liked to start with the right and climb down instead of going up. Oh, well, who am I? I'm not a musician, but
I think in a case, a lot of piano players should play with no hands. I think it would be a decided improvement.
The nose. Who used to play with his nose?
Jimmy Durante. He was a nose piano player.
Some
people play by ear, some by nose.
Oh, we have another one. Let's have it. You know who it was, Owen?
Yep, that was one of my all-time favorites, Bill Evans.
Great, great. But oh dear, we've done it again. Run plumb out of time. So we must thank you, Owen McNally,
Thank you very much, George.
for
It's
your
been
very good
pleasant.
company and your welcome contribution
I enjoyed it thoroughly.
to our little seminar. And to you kind listeners, we must bid you regretfully, as always, good night.
Good night, George Malcolm Smith. And so we close this week's installment of Other Gems of Jazz. But next week, same time, same wavelength, there'll be more of the same.
Tonight's presentation of Other Gems of American Jazz is made possible by a grant from the Travelers Insurance Company.